Welcome to another episode of Therapy Talk. We're here at Marietta College. We're going to be revisiting the special issue of suicide and suicide prevention. Today we have two special guests that have been courageous enough to share their story, and we're excited to do this at Marietta College, who is today's episode's official sponsor, and we're very thankful for the opportunity to be able to do this on their campus. Today I have a very special episode. We're going to be joined by Kevin King and LeeAnne Price, and they're going to share their experience in regards to suicide and talk about suicide prevention and healing. I hope you guys enjoy the episode.
Well, in 2009, living a normal life, and I got a phone call that evening that our son had taken his life. And it's something that you don't ever think that will ever happen to you. Mm-hmm. It's always happens to someone else. And when it does, it flips your whole world upside down. And you know from that point, nothing will ever be the same in your life. He left behind a beautiful wife and a daughter of 15 months. You know, we couldn't understand that. We'd noticed when he was in high school, his personality was changing, and we didn't know what that was about. He was always real outgoing, laughing, kind of the class clown, intelligent, always got good grades. Just not your typical depressed child, you know. But hindsight now, I can see where he was starting to go through some depression, and then he got involved with alcohol. Mm-hmm. And so he self-medicated with alcohol, and that we kept getting counseling for him for that and treatments, and that never went away. And he moved to Columbus and came back, and that's when life just really fell apart for him. I can tell you the first year it was numb. I lived from holiday to holiday, you know, or anniversary date, whatever, not really being able to focus on life. Mm-hmm. I wanted to put my foot out and get the world to stop, because I felt like I couldn't catch up with the world, that it was just spinning out of control around me.
What did that look like, kind of trying to get the world to stop? That's an interesting statement.
Well, I just couldn't catch up with living. Mm-hmm. I really myself wanted to just die. And I thought, I have other family members that care. Why would just my son create that in me, you know? Mm-hmm. When I had other loved ones.
Well, and you mentioned the holidays. I got to the point where you dreaded the holidays coming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know, you just wanted to stay in between them, because that was kind of like the numb zone. You want to get somewhere where the memories don't come at you so quick. Bill had mentioned, and I'm the one that had told him, I said, it's like riding a roller coaster in the dark.
Right.
You might get up and be in a perfect mood, and by the time you get out of the shower, your world's completely upside down just because of a simple memory or a why. And, you know, it's constantly, and everyone I've spoke with, and LeeAnne especially as well, it's constant. You learn to not live again, but to go on again.
So when you say constant, you say there's it might not be super intense constantly, but there's definitely some kind of level of.
You'll have your good times. You'll learn to laugh again. I stayed mad for a long time. I felt guilty for mm-hmm. being happy. If I would start having a good time, I'd feel guilty,
right?
Because he wasn't there. He's not getting the opportunity to share.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many. You know, he was going to have my first grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And it's your mind's a hard thing to deal with.
Sure.
And especially by yourself.
When your mind's trying to make sense of everything and trying to understand it.
It's a real whirlwind, and it makes no sense of how these things come at you. Mm-hmm. You may be there at Christmas Day and having a great time, but one little trigger will just turn things mm-hmm. different.
Was that similar for you, that like you're not allowed to have fun? Like, I
yes.
have to continue to suffer because.
Yeah, I felt guilty laughing. I thought, I'm supposed to be in mourning.
My biggest
this grief.
And for me, the way I handled it was, I don't necessarily would say I would get mean, but I would stay mad and push mm-hmm. people away. You know, I didn't want to talk talk just brought up more.
I mean, did people try to kind of like want to talk to try to help, or is that, what was it like for
family? But everybody in the family knows me, and you know, it was like they were looking at me through a brick wall. They knew they couldn't get through, and I would just push off, I'm fine, and go on.
Right.
And, you know, being the type work I do, I'd just be out in the woods on an excavator, on a dozer by myself, and that was my time. And many times I'd break down. If I was around everybody, I thought I had to be the tough guy. And
it's safer to be in the middle of the woods or completely by yourself,
right,
to kind of let out the emotion. But
you'll find and see, and the more people we meet and try to help, a lot of similarity in the stories of the situations that you'll go through, but they're all completely different as well. A lot of times you can't explain it.
Sure. Because you said that it doesn't make sense, like, right? You know.
Yeah. And, you know, I really felt like a lot of our friends left us, and it's because they didn't know how to deal with us. They didn't know how to talk to us. You know, you'd go to the grocery store, and people would turn around when they'd see you, and so that created even more loneliness. And as time has gone by, I realize now it's just because they didn't know what to say. And so I encourage everyone that goes through this, when they don't know what to say to someone, don't say anything.
Right.
But you can give them a hug. You can give them a pat on the
let
shoulder.
them know that you're there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, we had a lot of support, but a lot of people you thought would have been support was the same way, because we were very open. You know, a lot of people want to try to hide it. It's, well, this is, you know, it's just a bad thing that, you know, it wasn't like you lost your child in a car accident. Everybody knows how to react, say, or do. But, you know, and that's part of the stigma of everybody wants to hide it. And it's not, you know, we want to stop it.
Right.
Do what we can, and that's, you know, that's why we do what we're doing now, and I'm involved with anything and everything I can be with suicide prevention. But they kind of shy away, and surprisingly, I've never heard one person tell me, I know what you're going through, and I'm very surprised at that, because that's usually what you get.
Right. People trying to show understanding. Yeah.
Right.
Even though you kind of described yourself as kind of, I try to work it all out in my own mind, did you still feel kind of a sense of loneliness of people kind of backing away? Or was that, I mean, even though you kind of wanted to handle it yourself, it still would have been?
I got in a very bad place. I don't know that I was ever in trouble myself of doing any self-harm, but I've never had much of a problem with being a loner. What I had lost was my consciousness to what I was doing to everyone else. Maybe I couldn't see. I had no conscience of what I was doing to everybody around me. In turn, I was hurting my wife. I was hurting my children, and I didn't see it. You know, I have two more boys that are younger, and my youngest is a daughter. And I couldn't even see that they were going through the same pain that I was, and I wasn't there for them. And it took me a long time to see that.
Right.
It's not so much that I was being maybe self-centered, but in a sense I was, because I was worried about me and just didn't want to deal. But at the same time, it hurt me to see them hurting, so I didn't know how to fix that.
And maybe there's an element of, if I'm struggling with it, how am I going to help?
And it was, you know, how do I fix something that I can't fix within myself?
Right.
And that's one thing, you know, people need to understand that. And I was the world's worst, that, you know, therapy would never help me. And it did. Bill and I, we speak, whether we're in an office or just by text or on the phone. We've built a relationship. We have a lot in common with, you know, similar situations. That's when I learned that I'm allowed to go out and have fun again. I realize now that that's not what my son would want me to do, is to be shut up and mean and not enjoy. Similar to what LeeAnne was saying, my son was a star football player, had a full ride scholarship, never made below a B average in school, never seen him without a smile. There's some reason to believe that he may have had the CTE, the brain disorder, from concussions as well, but the hindsight's 20/20. It just seemed typical for a 20-year-old boy. You know, college is tough, life's tough, things are going on, but we've seen some changes in him, you know, from about March of that year until we lost him in July, and it was just a typical day. We had spoke about it, and he had actually decided that college wasn't for him, and we went through, took quite a long time for Dad to agree, but he had a great plan for what he wanted to do in life, and it was very respectable and would have made him a good living as well. College sports are extremely hard.
Yeah.
They kind of make the military look easy.
Right. There's a lot of responsibility and
yeah.
time invested. And
so he had actually quit going to college, came home, got a job. Everything was great. But like I said, we started seeing just little things. But, 20 years old, everything's stressful. He would never, ever say a cross word to anybody. And he was getting a little snappy. And then he would come back and he would apologize 30 seconds later. And it would tear him up. He had a great heart. But, on that day, his job, he would start at 3 o'clock in the afternoons, and sometimes it would be done anywhere between 11 at night till 2 in the morning. Well, that day, he got up. We spent about 3 hours together. He was playing with his little sister, made plans with other people for the next day, the day after that. Sometime in the middle of the night, I thought I had heard his truck come home, and then at 4:30 in the morning, 4:45, somebody's banging on our door, and I'm like,
yeah,
what's going on? So we get out of bed, and it was a couple of detectives from where we're from, which are actually friends of ours, and that's when they had told us. He said Tyler's had an accident. They were friends of the family. They didn't know how
to say it or
how to go about it. Of course, they were tore up. They watched him play football growing up, and so I'm looking out the door, like I know I heard his truck come home. Well, it wasn't parked. And I said, did he have an accident? And they said, no. I said, what's going on? They said, Kevin, he's gone. I said, what do you mean gone? And he said, he's gone, Kevin. Said he's passed. And I said, how? And they said, gunshot. Immediately I got mad. Who shot my son?
Right.
And they said, Kevin, he shot himself. And at that point in time, everything's just flipped. Best I can remember, I went down right there on the porch.
Sure.
We were best friends. He was my firstborn. We done all the firsts together.
Sure. And,
he was the type of person, he actually called 911 and told them. They told him, said, we've got an officer within a minute of where you're at.
Like, please wait.
Right. And he said, you don't understand. He said, I didn't call for help. I called to let you know where I was at so you could take me home. And they, and to tell that part of the story, what I was getting at was they said if he was the type of person, and everybody that knew him, they said we would have went to our graves looking for the person that shot him because we would have never looked in the direction of him being the one to do it. I've never been there. I don't know if it makes sense to me that it would be more understandable if we had a reason behind it, that it was a car wreck that took my son's life. If he would have died of cancer, not that it would be easier in losing a child, but the understanding part. At least you would have that, because there's a blank page in this book that's never going to be filled out.
Right.
And it will haunt you day in and day out. I've laid in bed hours upon hours at night awake, just trying to find that one piece of the puzzle so I can fill out that page, and it's not there. You don't know.
Well, I would imagine for both of you the hardest part of this journey of healing is you can't find conclusion to the event least some answers, and there's like a perpetual search for answers.
Well, so I had a gentleman explain it to me. He said that it's somewhat like a missing person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You'll never really know until you get your closure. And with us, there is none.
Mm-hmm.
There never will be. I've told a few people, they ask how you're doing. And I said, you have bad days and then you have worse.
I think for me, I don't have as many bad days, but it's been 11 years for me. And I think the hole has closed in my heart. I know it will never completely close, but I know I have a strong faith in God, and it's because of my faith that helped me get through that journey. I just kept seeking for answers. And I know I'll never have the answer that I want. I have what I need, but I'll never have the answer that I want. Right. And that's hard to accept.
What would you guys say is kind of the most difficult thing for you in terms of healing?
I think for me, it's Mother's Day. It's still probably my toughest day. Mm-hmm. I couldn't celebrate Mother's Day with my own mother for 4 or 5 years. Now I'm past that, and I try to celebrate that I'm a mom. Whether he's here or not, I'm still a mom. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that's still the biggest struggle. Maybe his daughter's birthday is a struggle because I think my son should be here to see her growing up and what he's missing. And I sometimes feel irritated about that. Not really mad because I think I'm past the mad stage.
But there was a mad stage?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was there a mad stage for you?
I was raised to be a God-fearing man, and I really turned my back on God. I was mad, I was angry, and up until I finally got to see going to therapy and talking, because I didn't see it. Mm-hmm. I thought I was fine.
So your anger was directed more at God in terms of
couldn't understand
how could this possibly,
and why.
And yours was more kind of related to your son, or?
I was mad at God. I walked away from my faith probably for a year, and I'm glad that God doesn't walk away from us.
Right.
But my faith has grown now because of the loss of my son. Mm-hmm. I see it's God's will for me to be out here doing this and helping others, and starting other programs to help other people in prevention, mm-hmm. helping other people who are survivors like we are.
We started the dirt track racing. That was something else that more than likely just kept me occupied. It wasn't really, we spent family time together, mm-hmm. but it wasn't mending me. And I stayed angry for 3.5, 4 years, maybe a little longer. I finally can say now that, I trust that everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. I may not know what the reason was. I may never know. But I have to put my faith back into God that He has our sons. Mm-hmm. There's times still yet that, you'll get a little bit mad, hurting disbelief. Mm-hmm. There's times that it's like reality just smacks you right in the face and you realize they're gone. His birthday is the hardest for me.
It is.
July is not a good month for us. That's when his birth date is actually in March, but we lost him in July, and then 4 years later we lost my mother, 7 days difference from when we lost him. So summertime's just not a good time.
Yeah. What do you guys do in those moments? Because we think of, when we actually talk about this oftentimes with people suffering from traumatic incidences, what are those anniversaries, those dates that are really hard, and you guys have identified some of those. And how do you kind of get through that, or what is kind of your approach to those anniversary dates or those times of the year?
I alienated myself. Mm-hmm. Like I said, because I was mad. I like an occasional cold beer, but I got to where I started drinking more during these hard times. I would start self-medicating, mm-hmm. which was not making anything better.
No.
And, now my hindsight's 20/20 again, and I see that. When you get close to a birthday or maybe the time when you lost your child, to me, it's like you see that date coming, and now it's easier to be prepared for it. Mm-hmm. Basically, to not hit it straight on, but kind of go around that. stay in that good mood.
So do you plan positive events, or what's that kind of look like?
Try, or just keep yourself
Busy?
into a positive place. And that's what was so hard for me, was my mind just stayed there. I stayed in that well.
Sure.
And just wouldn't come out.
Is it more of a certain question you keep asking yourself to try to answer, or is it just replaying the memory of, like,
It's a lot of different. To me, I play the scenario over and over of, it seems like you always see and hear or think of something different.
like when you found out, or?
Yeah, and I mean, because then you back up. What was going on? What could I have changed? Could I have done something? We could have done this, or, did I cause something to trigger that day? Or and your mind will sit there and it will eat you up.
Yeah.
And that's what I can tell people is the best thing is it doesn't have to be a therapist. Get a buddy.
Yeah.
Right.
You've
I
got
agree.
to talk,
I agree.
because you will fill up inside. As we was speaking earlier, it's just like an addiction. You don't see your changes. Other people will. I had people that, said, we could see the look in your face and the hurt in your eyes, and we were afraid to approach you. You were in a bad spot.
Sure.
But I didn't see that when I looked in the mirror. I was just being a hardcore man. I'm
Right.
all right. I was nowhere near all right. So it's very big. Find someone.
Doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be just a simple
Small.
text or
Sometimes
something
the
small.
smaller things turn into some of the biggest things.
Right.
Because you'll feel like there's nobody out there. You're not the only one it's happened to. I've got to meet LeeAnne, and we met just by text, and there's plenty of others. And I've put it out there. I don't know what I can do, but I will do anything I can do to help you. I'll listen.
I think when you help others, it makes you heal. I think we take our mind off ourselves and put the focus on helping someone else, and in that turn helps. My son took his life in September, and that's Suicide Awareness Month. So for me, my whole life is focused on that month and all the activities, and then I'm still struggling with trying to get through that one day
Sure.
in September. And it's like, I'm doing this for a cause. I'm doing this to honor my son, and so you kind of take a deep breath and you just go on. The people that are close to me that are in this work with me know, and I'm not afraid to say, hey, this is not a good day for me.
Right.
I'm honest with people now. I couldn't be at the beginning because they didn't understand, but I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about the journey also, and helping other people heal.
What is the one thing that you've learned that has helped you the most? Like, what is something, when you reflect back on your journey, what kind of has helped you get to a place where you can be that person who, today's a bad day, or knowing how to get through that? Is there something that really sticks out to you?
I think learning to forgive myself, that I didn't have to be the perfect mom. I'm not a perfect mom. And getting past that, the guilt that you place upon yourself, when you reach that point that, okay, I didn't make this decision, he did. When you get past that point, I think that's when you begin to really heal. And I have to give my glory to God for that, because I was so lost, so lost.
Is there an event or an experience that you recall that kind of got where you remember that point where you're like, forgiveness is a possibility, or did it happen in church?
I remember one thing that probably has stuck in my mind was the first Out of Darkness walk I went to. I was so shocked that there were other people like me out there. I could not believe it.
So when you're not alone, you found out you
I
weren't
wasn't
alone.
alone. But I could not find counselors that had been through what I had been through, and that was what I was focusing on. I didn't want to talk to somebody that hadn't experienced the same feelings that I was going through. I wanted somebody that could understand my angers. When I was really ticked off, I was mad at the world. I'm like, I can really relate to Kevin when he talks about his anger. I wanted somebody to understand those feelings. And so I made it my mission. I went and got facilitator training and started what's called a Hope group. And from there, it's just talking with other people, walking alongside someone else that's been through this journey. It doesn't take an education. It just takes a friendship.
Connection. That's the same with me. I couldn't find nobody to relate to until I found Bill, because he had been there. He'd been mad. And that was, it's hard. I felt that I couldn't keep somebody's attention long enough for me to get done talking, because they're not there. They haven't been there. And it's, we're wired, and we understand that we're going to lose our grandparents, and then we're going to lose our parents, and then it's us. Right. We're not wired to lose a child.
Sure. And
it's just, to me, it's not right. And that was the problem I had. And that's why I was going, why? I don't know is that I ever felt the guilt. I still felt that maybe I had done something, or maybe more so, could I have done something?
You wanted to kind of be able to rewind time. And
in my eyes, dads fix everything.
Right.
When it's bad, the kids go to dad. Our son had always came to us. There was no secrets. I'd get to 3 o'clock phone calls from college or from high school, and he'd always say, he'd be laughing by the time we got off the phone, and he's like, "Dad, you always make everything better." That's what dads do. And that was the biggest problem I had, was why didn't he come to dad? Why didn't he call me?
Right.
And until his high school, his team had a preacher on their team, their football team, and I spoke with him before we even had the funeral. And I said, "Russ, I don't understand why. You know how he was." They were very close, through 4 years of school. He explained it to me, and that's the part that helped me was, your son was very strong-willed, very hard-headed. He was the hardest person on him. Coaches didn't have to be hard on him. If he made a mistake, he beat himself up. And when he put his mind to something, it was going to happen. And he told me, he said, the only reason he didn't call you, Kevin, was because he knew you would stop something that he had already made his mind up to do. And I believed that, because that's how my son was.
And that was a healing explanation? Did that kind of help?
That helped, that part, because it did. It really, really bothered me, because it made me judge the relationship we had. Dad was the first to know about anything. Dad knew about the first kiss, Dad knew everything.
Right.
And that's the kind of relationship we've had. And when he didn't come to me,
you started to question that. And
why?
Yeah. And
that's the biggest, for a 3-letter word, it's terrible, because you have a bunch of whys. And they're hard to get by and get away from.
I think you need to ask why until you don't need to ask it anymore. Until you find peace within yourself that it's I'll never know. And you just are satisfied with that. But I think it's important to keep asking why.
Yes.
So there's an element of, and this is probably really hard, is acceptance. So at some point you have to kind of accept the reality of it.
And life does go on.
And how your life is going to be different from here on out. And,
one thing, we've not had a family picture taken since my son took his life, and it's because I feel like we're not complete.
Sure.
And that's probably something that's been on my mind that I need to have done, but I just
not ready for that yet.
Can't do that yet. Yep, not complete.
Your life is the most valued thing in the world, but I don't know what he was thinking, and I don't know what he was going through. So whatever he was dealing with was obviously bigger than life. You never stop thinking. So there's always, they're fewer and far between now than what they were, but little things will just pop up, and you'll be like, you'll run that scenario through your head, and some of the hardest for me now, and that's why I say it's like a roller coaster in the dark. You can be having a great day, and it's just like somebody smacks you right in the face that you didn't see it coming, the reality, enough to even jar your heart for a moment. that your son's gone. It's not that you forget, but there was something there for a moment, and of course to even and to think about or talk about having the dreams. I've woke up and walked outside thinking that I heard his truck come home. His younger brother, our middle son, has taken over his room, and I've gone so far as looking in and seeing him instead of, Tyler laying there,
Right.
because I've dreamt it and it was so real. And it's hard to get back in the bed after that. Your mind is very evil at times. And that's why I've stressed to people, because I've been there on that side, that I don't care if it's 2:00 in the morning. You've got my number. Call me.
Reach out.
Because I've been there, and it's, you get the shock of waking up and wondering, and before you can even get your mindset right, you want to believe. I want to believe. I know I heard his truck. I know he's home. Maybe I was having a dream about all this happening, and before you can get your mindset right, you're looking out the door. You're checking in the bedroom. It can play hectic with you.
And that's I would imagine that's the power of the connecting with people that you can relate to, that are available, like outside of, therapy offices only open so many hours in a day, but if you have somebody that
And for me,
you can connect to or be available.
It's a relief when I share a story with somebody and they go, I've done the same.
Yeah.
Because the relief is, okay, I'm not the only one.
So what I'm also hearing, and you can tell me if this is talking about it in the right situation, is healing. That it does kind of, and maybe for you guys, it's talking with somebody who has had a similar experience or can relate to that.
Yes, definitely.
I enjoy, and I speak of my son a lot because I was proud of him and I loved him for the things that he did in his 20 years was astounding. And I don't hold a grudge towards people, and it doesn't upset me, but if you're speaking of your son and then you mention that you've lost him, and human error can't help how. They want to know how.
Yeah.
As soon as you mention suicide, you get blank face, like, where do I go from here?
Throws them back.
And typically you'll get, I'm sorry, and I let them know it's okay, and then that will get me talking on the terms of the suicide prevention and awareness. And, I told somebody, I said, it's kind of like when you're younger and you see a vehicle you want because nobody else has one until you buy that vehicle and you're like, they're everywhere. We had no idea the scale and the real problem that there is with suicide until we were affected. You hear about it in a gray area here or there, and people do classify it as something else. Well, it's just not here or there. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, and I feel you need to be more open about it. There's a lot more people. With me coming forward and telling my story, there's a lot of people that have came to me that I've been around day in and day out that I had no idea that they had been affected. They don't want to talk about it. And I think that's one of the big things that I really want to do is get the awareness. To me, it wasn't such a big thing. There were so many people that commended us for, we put it out. We didn't hide it. I don't think we should be. That's one of the biggest problems, and it is. It's everywhere.
It hurts my heart when I see a family that's lost a loved one to suicide, and they are in denial of it because that they're not going to heal.
No.
Yeah.
That it's going to always be buried inside them.
Right.
And you'll see this after, I have someone in our support group that's lost, and 2 generations later, they've still never dealt with it. And it affects the whole family.
And probably in ways that they don't necessarily realize either. So a lot of awareness and self-awareness, part of your guys' journey is recognizing something about yourself that, now I'm starting to recognize that this is really getting to me, or it's getting to a point where I need to kind of find a way to.
And that's something I tell people. I said, I'm married to her, so I can brag about her. But I said, I have the greatest wife in the world, because any normal person would have left me. And I said, I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
But she hung right in there, and I changed her life. Even though she was going through the pain as well, I changed her life to where everybody tiptoed around Dad.
Mm-hmm.
She would see the warning signs and let the kids know, hey, Dad's having a bad time, behind my back.
They
which I
operated
didn't
their
see
life
this.
around kind of your
I was just, I was a walking disease, and, the disease is flared up, and I didn't see that, but they could see me.
Is it different now? Like, I mean, I would imagine that there are times where you guys are, like, where you're having a bad day, and maybe even now not recognizing, but does your wife now, is it at a point where they can say, hey, you're going down this road,
Yes.
I need you to do something to snap out of it? Or
where they would walk around me before, I have a son that just turned 18, one that's 15, a little girl that's 9. The boys will just look at me now, and they'll come up and put an arm around me.
Mm-hmm.
You all right? We were avid hunters and fishermen, and this is the first year that I went full bore. I went out with them once or twice last year, but that was mine and Tyler's time.
Sure.
And when we were bringing the younger boys up, we could split up because, Tyler had a little bit of age on the other ones, and we would switch boys back and forth. He was raising his little brothers with me.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me, and it was okay in my eyes to pawn them off on the grandparents to go hunting because I couldn't. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And, I'd get angry. I'd make excuses. That bothers and hurts me now as I lost 4 years with them in certain activities and other than just being there. So we got to go out this year and get back into hunting, and it's all good because I know now that's what Tyler would have wanted. He wouldn't want me to stop living my life. He loved his little brothers and his little sister and all of us as well. You have to make yourself, but you go on and you have to enjoy, and it's okay to smile. It's okay to have a good time. I feel that he's with me all the time anyway. So you have to believe that they're still enjoying what you're doing, even though you can't enjoy them being there with you.
Could you guys, talk a little bit about kind of your efforts with prevention?
I think we live in such a fast-paced world that I think we miss the human contact with people. Besides the pandemic, which has really made it worse. But I think just to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, what are you doing? Or how are you doing? Send a card. Just checking on someone. Years ago, we used to bake a cake and take to somebody's house just because it was a kind thing to do. Right. And we've gotten away from all that kindness, that human interaction. That I think we really miss that. Somebody just letting you know they care. We have a program now with Marietta Memorial called Circle of Hope, and they notify us when they have somebody that comes in there with depression, and we just call them. We spend time on the phone. If they want to meet, we'll meet someplace publicly, but just picking up the phone and calling and saying, hey, what are you doing today?
Yeah.
That means the world to people.
So maybe we should kind of be more maybe thoughtful or focused on connection. We should be reaching out to people and to try to connect with people every day and reach out.
Well, anytime you do something nice for someone, it always comes back to you tenfold.
Right.
And just extending a hand to someone, if that makes you feel better, imagine how it makes them feel.
And that's the thing. It's so hard about awareness. You can't just look at a crowd of people and go, that one might be getting ready to commit suicide.
Sure.
We didn't see it, and it was in our own home. So to me, it's building the trust when you're at these events, showing that you do care. And when I mean building the trust, for instance, if you're having thoughts of suicide, but you're here and we're talking at the race car, if I make you comfortable around me and tell you my story, you're more compelled to come back and say, I've been having some problems.
Sure.
Because you're comfortable with me now. It's hard to reach out because where do you reach to?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a sense, they've kind of got to come to you to begin with, but you've got to make them feel comfortable with you in your appearance, that I am here to help. I'm not going to judge you. Mm-hmm. I've been there and went through it with someone that I love with all my heart. I'm not judging them. I'm not going to judge you. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. We don't have to talk about what the problem is. Mm-hmm. We can get clear away from it. People need to reach out because there are people out there. The phone numbers, the texts, all that. A lot of communities have people like LeeAnne and myself that law enforcement's trained in a lot of different ways. And this is something in our community that they're thinking of doing. And my name's been thrown into the hat. Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to? If we call you in the middle of the night, we're not trained on how, we can stop a robber.
Right. We
can't stop somebody that's having a mental issue and a breakdown at that moment. They don't know what to do. There's a lot of communities now that's getting people that will come out. My big motto has always been, my boys will tell you, whatever it takes. Dad, how are we going to do this? I said, whatever it takes.
And so some of the awareness aspect of it is can we bring awareness to the public that there are places for people who are struggling with thoughts of suicide, that there's places where they can go where maybe they can feel safe.
Yeah, that was, with our race cars, we had, it's either 6 or 8 inch letters of the suicide prevention line, mm-hmm. the text, mm-hmm. right down the sides of the cars and the truck. I'd like to think maybe somebody's caught them here or there. And maybe it's done some good, because that's all we were trying to do was bring awareness. And mm-hmm. unfortunately, they really have to make the first step. You can't see, but for them to know and to get the word out now, there is help. Mm-hmm. It's okay to not be okay.
Right.
Everybody's got problems. Some of us hides them better than others. There's always somebody. Maybe I'm not going to be your person, but LeeAnne might. And if I can't click things off, I can find somebody.
Both your kids males, and there is certainly the stigma of males reaching out and asking for help. And we do probably as a gender want to handle things all by ourselves.
And I did. I mean, I did for 4 years. I was going to fix me by myself. Mm-hmm. I'm probably about as strong-minded as any man I know. I am a loner. I want to do things on my own and make it work on my own. Men they're proud, mm-hmm. but your pride will get you in trouble sometimes.
Sure.
You have to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. I mean, it's just if you don't talk to somebody, it's there inside of you, and it will not go away. It's just constant rolling chamber, and it will cause extreme problems. I swallowed my pride, and I'm glad that I did, mm-hmm. because it's got my family back to where we're healing.
Sure.
Are we completely healed? Maybe never.
Do you guys feel that the pain that you guys might experience on the day-to-day, do you see it differently? Do you see the meaning of the pain differently as you've healed?
I think I can live a life better. Mm-hmm. I appreciate things more. Mm-hmm. The little things mean a lot more than they used to. Just somebody coming up and giving you a hug means so much, where maybe I took that stuff for granted before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the small things in life now.
We live in that fast-paced world. You get used to getting up at 5 o'clock, having coffee at 10 after 5. I take my shower at this time, and people do routines.
You're on autopilot for most of your day.
And, I recognize things. I hear the rooster outside in the mornings, and it's pleasant. There's so many different things that it does open your eyes.
I think getting outside is really important. Even if it's cold, get out, take a walk, enjoy the scenery. In the springtime, you have the flowers, the green. Look at the different colors of green there are in trees. Mm-hmm. Just look at the little things.
Well, I would imagine going out in a day like this where it's really cold can really change the way you feel, because it's going to shock your system quite a bit. Yes. So definitely.
I would really like to encourage people that if they've gone through the loss of a loved one, coworker, friend, they can always come to the Hope Support Group. Right now we're not meeting because of the pandemic, but you can get the resources at Life and Purposes. They have them. I think it's very important. Washington County has a lost team. That has made a difference in people's lives. As far as the prevention, don't be afraid to reach out. Even if you are in elementary and you just feel really, really lonely, it's okay to call someone.
Right.
Because there are people that do care.
And there's Facebook pages for suicide awareness. I've spoke with some people on there. They wouldn't be there if they weren't looking. So let them know you're there. You have to understand it's okay to not be okay. We're all not okay.
And I would always be worried if you were okay, like that there's an element of like
telling you they're okay,
that's actually
there's something wrong.
There's something wrong.
Because
that I would
did it
more.
for 4 years.
Right.
I'm okay. I was not okay.
Right. And so what you're saying is that it doesn't mean that you're broken. It actually means you're human, and that it's understandable that you would be not okay.
Exactly. It's a bigger thing than most people will ever see or understand. So in a sense, there's plenty of us out there that come from different backgrounds that it's kind of like adopting a pet. You'll find your person. And that's, it's all it takes sometimes. It takes 10 seconds for me to send a text to somebody and say, hey, buddy, how you doing today? You was on my mind. Hope everything's okay. All right. Couple minutes, you get one back. Well, that just made me feel better as well. You get it on both ends. You're trying to help somebody, and then you're helping them by them helping you as well.
Doesn't take a big thing. It can be a small gesture that's going to be the most powerful thing for that person. With all my heart, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate you guys being on here and telling your story. And I am confident that these discussions will help people listening and provide an experience to let people know that there's hope out here and there's people out here that are, able to help. People aren't alone. So I appreciate you guys taking the time, coming down to Marietta College and joining me this week. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.